I will try to talk a little bit of my understanding of what we can do better between China and the United States. And if I have time, I will touch a little bit upon the cross-strait relations and the Taiwan question. I think when we talk about this bilateral relationship, actually it has already moved beyond this bilateral level. We used to talk about 3 T's, Taiwan, Tibet, and trade. And at the current stage, nobody talk about these T's or C's. We talk about, like Professor Wu Xingbo did, the 3 levels of this relationship. I think we can do better in the following 6 areas. The first thing is that I think China and the US should strengthen our cooperation and coordination in global governance. You know that China is going to host the G20 summit meeting the next year. And this morning, the former Prime Minister of Canada, Paul Martin, delivered a speech in SIIS, and he said that he hoped that these 2 countries could play a leading role in the future of G20. And also, for example, the reform of IMF. So far, everybody understands the reform is necessary, but a lot of obstacles within the United States. And China and the United States, these are 2 biggest economies in the world. And China is the very good representative of those emerging economic countries. And also, the United States is the representative of the developed economies. So if they too can have better dialogues and they can play better roles in the G20 framework, then it will be certain the cooperation and the coordination within the G20 framework would be better. And it's in all of us' interests. And also, on the global level, China and the United States can have better cooperation in Africa, for example, in counter Ebola, and also in the cyberspace area, though we have a lot of quarrels between us. And also, the climate change is a good example that we have already had very good cooperation. So this is the first area. The second area, I think China and the United States should have more cooperation and coordination on those regional security issues. Both these 2 countries have very big influence on the regional security issues. So far, the cooperation between these 2 have been very limited. For example, at the end of the Bush administration, that was in roughly about 2005, the Americans, the officials of the Bush administration, understood that the war in Afghanistan met a lot of obstacles and challenges. So they came to China and asked for China's help. And after 10 years, this year it's 2015, the China and the United States have real cooperation and coordination in Afghanistan, though so far the cooperation is still very limited. And we too have cooperation on the Iranian nuclear issue and also North Korean nuclear issue. And what else can we do? Certainly we can find more security issues that we can deal with together. For example, in the Middle East. When I said cooperation, actually the challenges are huge. For example, some American colleagues asked us what China can do in Middle East. And if China really did something, then the other American colleagues would ask, what are you going to do? What's your ambition? What's your hidden agenda? So this is a quite interesting phenomenon. And the third area that we can do together and we can do better is that if we look at all those issues that we are facing now, for example, the cybersecurity, for example, the disputes in South China Sea, actually we are in the process of reforming the old rules and trying to making the new rules. For example, cyberspace, it's a new space. And actually there is no rules within that space. Or you can say those are all the old rules and we should reform them. So in the process of reform, whether China and the United States can work together to make this process more peaceful and stable, not to make military conflicts during this whole process. This is very important for the interests of our two countries. For example, the South China Sea issue. Actually, we have a different understanding of certain norms or the international law. For example, President Xi Jinping said that China would not seek the militarization in South China Sea. And when I visited Washington, D.C., several American colleagues asked me, what's the definition of militarization? And during the Shangshan Forum several days ago in Beijing, the PLA officer asked the U.S. senior military official, what's the definition of militarization? Certainly, we two sides have different understandings. So if we have difference, then what are we going to do? Whether we should fight with each other to solve the difference, or we should sit down to talk to each other and find a way, find a solution. And the fourth area that we can do better is better understanding of each other. It's quite interesting that our two societies, in our two societies, there were a lot of different voices. So it's quite ridiculous for me that one American colleague told me, China is not a democracy. So it's quite funny for you to say that you have a lot of different ideas within your society. It's just a joke to me. But actually, if you are familiar with the current China, that the society is full of different ideas and voices. So it's very important for us to understand what the different voices they are coming from, where are they coming from, and who do they represent. For example, my American colleagues told me that the two very famous scholars, the former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to India, Ambassador Blackwell, and Ashley Tellis, they wrote a report on China-U.S. relations. And also Professor David Shambo said something about China-U.S. relations. But other American colleagues told me that these two, the reports and the arguments actually are quite minority in Washington, D.C. They don't represent the government's policy. But here, a lot of Chinese would say, you see, the U.S. government, they are changing their policy towards China. And also, some American scholars, when they write their report, they quote some sayings from Chinese scholars or Chinese reporters from certain websites and magazines. Some of them I have never heard of. So they don't represent the mainstream thinking of China. So I think the exchanges between our two countries, especially on the level of people-to-people exchanges. For example, during Xi Jinping's visit to the United States, we have the forum between the governors and the states leaders between our two countries. This kind of communication is very, very important for our understanding of each other. And the fifth that I think we can do better is we are big powers. Sometimes we don't understand the feeling of smaller countries. I think what we are doing, when we are doing something together, we should make others feel comfortable and feel happy. Our policy should be predictable. For example, when I visited New Zealand to participate in a conference on China-U.S. relations during the National Day holiday, my daughter asked me, she is 13 years old, she asked me, I can understand why you go to Washington, D.C. because you do research on China-U.S. relations. But why would you go to New Zealand? And then she answered her own question. Oh, I know, because the people there, they are also interested in China-U.S. relations. This is true. What I mean is that China and the United States should not make those smaller countries or our neighboring countries choose between China and the United States. They just don't want to make this kind of a choice. And also, for example, after China, our president initiated the concept of a new type of major country relations. We received a delegation from India, military people in SIS. One of the senior military generals, the generals, he asked me, is India a big power? Is India a major country? You say that you want to build a new type of major country relations with the United States. Do you want to do so with India? And I said, of course you are. Of course. But what I mean is that we should think more about other countries, not to talk the word like G2. I know that a lot of countries don't like this word. And last part that I think we can do together, do it better, is that I think we should respect each other more. I know that a lot of American colleagues, they don't like the new type of major country relationship between China and United States. They don't like the concept. One of the reasons is it's not normal English. And one of the other reason is that they don't have opinion with the win-win cooperation and no conflict, no confrontation. But they have problem with the mutual respect of each other's core interests. They don't like this. But I think that what China wants is that we can have more respect from the United States towards China's own choice of development, of our way of development. This is very important for China. That actually we are two very different countries. We have different history, culture, food, music, literature, way of thinking. We are very different. But at one aspect, we are very similar. For example, the United States, the Americans always talk about U.S. exceptionalism. We are unique. We are different. And Chinese always talk about Chinese characteristics. We are different from the United States, from UK, from other countries. So these two countries, at some point, they are quite similar. So here, I think we will try to understand each other better. And here, I think the word empathy is quite useful. Try to put yourself in others' shoes and understand others' views and their situations. So do I still have time to? No? Okay. 1 minute is about the cross-strait relations. Taiwan question has not been one of the hot topics in China-U.S. relations for quite many years, 7, 8 years. And because of the election is coming, I think the next year we will see the Taiwan, this word, become the high priority of China-U.S. relations. I think this is not bad news, but it's not good. I hope that we can have more interaction during the Q&A. Thank you.